צמא, צמא, צמא לך נפשי כמה, כמה, כמה לך בשרי. צמא, צמא, צמא לך נפשי כמה, כמה, כמה לך בשרי. צמא, צמא, צמא לך נפשי כמה, כמה, כמה לך בשרי. צמא, צמא, צמא לך נפשי כמה, כמה.
Hello everyone and a good morning. This is the third in the segment of the dress codes for davening, and today we're going to deal with jackets. So as everybody remembers, in our first segment we quoted the Gemara in Shabbos that says that Rav Kahana would change his dress based on his mood. If indeed it was terrible time, he would actually dress down, and if it was a better time, he would dress up. And when it talks about dressing up, indeed, it says that Rav Kahana, and I quote, Lovish umitkase umitatef umatzle. He would wear more clothing than usual. Based on this, the Shulchan Aruch paskins that derech hachachamim v'talmidehem, the great scholars and their students, not all Jews, but the great scholars and their students, shelo yitpalalu ela keshehem atufim, they shouldn't daven unless they are covered. Namely, they wear an additional cover above and beyond their regular clothing, but he's very pedantic, only the great scholars and their students. The Kaf HaChaim, this is the Kaf HaChaim that is not Rav Chaim Palaji, the known Sephardi, but rather Rav Yaakov Chaim Sofer, also a Sephardi. He actually lived between 1869 to 1939, both in Iraq, Baghdad, and eventually here in Israel, wrote a Perush on the Shulchan Aruch that many Sephardim are somechan. He basically says two things. Number one, the fact that the Shulchan Aruch said Talmidei Chachamim and Chachamim, he doesn't mean only them, but rather everyone can follow Rav Kahana's example and wear an additional clothing above and beyond their regular clothing for davening, even saying the words of Al Tachamid Chacham Kol Adam Yesh Lo La'asot Ken. You know what? Make yourself a Talmid Chacham for this halacha. Number two, he quotes the Chesed La'alafim, another great scholar of the Sephardic world that agrees with him, and then says that this is the way to do it. Number one, lavish, you have to wear your regular clothing. Number two, mitkase, you wear above and beyond that, say, a jacket. And number three, mitatef, which means in a talis. So basically, when you come to shul for shachris, for sure, you're going to be wearing three things. Number one, your regular clothing. Number two, a jacket. And number three, your talis. However, the Ramah looks at this Gemara and basically quotes it verbatim, namely that when it's good times, you dress up, and when it's bad times, you dress down. He doesn't really mention the fact that you have to wear an additional level of clothing. So while the Shulchan Aruch saw this Gemara and said, put on more clothing, the Ramah basically said, dress in terms of your mood. And indeed, the Aruch HaShulchan, Rav Epstein of the 20th century, comes along and says that during the week, since times are not so good usually, you don't have to wear a jacket, but Shabbos v'Yom Tov mitpalalim bebeged elyon de'en laskir tzar b'Shabbat v'Yom Tov. Since Shabbos and Yom Tov are void of any petition, and therefore we don't mention everything we're lacking, including the terrible times that we may or may not be in. Therefore, on Shabbos, it's actually the right thing to wear a jacket for davening, following Rav Kahana to the T. So to make a long story short, according to Rav Kahana, indeed, you dress up or dress down based on moods. The Shulchan Aruch basically took this Gemara and says, you always dress up if you are, and I quote, Chachamim v'talmidehem. The Kaf HaChaim says everyone should do it, but the Ramah says it doesn't mean that. It basically means dress up or dress down based on your mood, and thus the Aruch HaShulchan says on Shabbos, jacket, good idea, during the week, depending on the mood, but in general, not. On that note, I just want to mention one postscript regarding wearing a jacket for davening at Shachris, and that is when you put on your tefillin. The fact that you put on your tefillin does not negate the fact that you're supposed to come before God to befit a king. And therefore, if you're wearing a jacket during davening, I find it absolutely outrageous that people wear a jacket in such a way that it looks ridiculous. They don't put on a jacket above and beyond their tefillin. They actually wear their jacket in such a way that it hangs down. You know, they put it over here, so one arm is here, one arm is not in, and ultimately that's the way they come before God. So many poskim said this is not the way to do it. And let's start with the Kaf HaChaim that we just quoted. So the Kaf HaChaim comes and quotes the Chesed La'alafim that he already quoted in the name of the Yafel Alev, which was the son of Rav Chaim Palaji, that ultimately says you have to put on your tefillin and put the jacket above the tefillin, namely put it into the sleeve. So did Rav Soloveitchik. In his last years, he didn't wear a jacket for davening. And the students asked him why, and he said, I always wore a jacket for davening, but now I started to wear Reb Chaim Brisker's tefillin. They're too big. I can't put it into the sleeve, and therefore I really cannot wear a jacket for davening, because if I do, it's going to hang down, and that's not the way you're supposed to come before God. You can't come before God dressed like a schlump. Indeed, not only did a Sephardi and a Lithuanian say this, a Hasidic posek said this. Rav Moshe Sternbuch, in his responsum, says exactly the same thing. He's talking about a gartel, and in the middle of the gartel, he says people look ridiculous since they put on their jacket and they take it off to put on their tefillin, so they put on their gartel, and they don't take off their gartel in order to put back the jacket after they put on their tefillin, and therefore they just have their jacket hang down. And he says it's absolutely outrageous, not the right thing to do, and because of this gartel, which he does not sure if you need or don't need, the bottom line is you look like a schlump for davening. And Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach finally says exactly the same thing. Now, I just want to be intellectually honest. Rabbi Yecheskel Avramsky is quoted as saying, and I didn't see this in print, but it's quoted as saying that if you're going to wear it for davening with one sleeve in and one sleeve out, then basically wear it all day that way. In other words, if that's the way you come before God, that's the way you have to come before everyone. I don't know anyone that does that. And I will add that in the Piskei Tshuvos, they do bring the Orchos Chai Rabbeinu that says that the Chazon Ish, actually allowed this for davening. I believe that the answer probably is that you're coming before God, so God would say, hey, you look beautiful because you're actually showing off your tefillin. But I would be very honest, if I may, even though Afar Ani L'Raglei HaChazon Ish, I am absolutely dust in front of the great Chazon Ish, I would say that it's hard for me to understand, simply because the halacha was clear and remains clear. You have to come before God to befit a king, not to come before God different than a king. Number one. Number two, tefillin is indeed beautiful, but the halacha is v'haya le'ot al yadcha lachem le'ot v'lo la'achirim le'ot. Dafka regarding tefillin shel yad, it's supposed to be covered up, not actually exposed to the world. And when people wear their tefillin in that way, they usually do expose it to the whole world. So for those two reasons, as you could see, a slew of poskim, Kaf HaChaim the Sephardi, Rav Soloveitchik the Lithuanian, Rav Moshe Sternbuch the Hasidic, and finally Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach the Yerushalmi, all said if you're going to wear a jacket with your tefillin, make sure to put on your tefillin and then put the jacket above it so that you look dignified for davening. So to sum up, it seems like Rav Kahana dressed up and dressed down for davening. The Shulchan Aruch says only great rabbis and their students should wear a jacket. The Ramah says based on your mood, and ultimately it doesn't seem to be an obligation unless that's the way you come before a king. Having said that, there is a source for it, and therefore people that do put on a jacket for davening, you should know they have what to rely on. Obviously, when you do, make sure that it is dignified even when you wear your tefillin.
Ki yoni yamechu ve'yatu elekai